Hey, everybody. This is Darren, your host of the Touch MBA podcast. Welcome back to the show. I just had an extensive and illuminating discussion with Cherif N'doli, who is from France and Côte d'Ivoire. He applied to Insead and London Business School and got into both MBA programs. And in this conversation, he shares his hard-earned lessons. I think what you'll find very interesting about this conversation is just how open and generous Cherif is with his knowledge, what he's learned, and you're going to get great tips every step of the way. We talk about what he believes were his 5 key success factors. We also talk about how to tie your narrative together in a powerful and compelling way, especially when you've had multiple jobs. In Cherif's case, he had 5 different jobs before applying for the MBA, and he also was applying with more experience as an older candidate. So we talk about that. We also discuss how Cherif assessed his own competitiveness, which he thought was very important. Getting an MBA is all about what you expect to get out of the program and whether the program can really help you achieve those goals. And so he wanted to get crystal clear about his competitiveness and his fit before he applied. Cherif is a writer. We talked about how he went about his essays, and he shares some really great tips about how to make your interviews more conversational and more compelling. So I think this was a really insightful episode, and I hope you take good notes on this one. There's so much you can take away from his approach and mindset to applying to and getting into these great schools. Remember that at Touch MBA, we offer free school selection help, and we can assess your competitiveness as well at your target schools. We specialize in helping you do this for non-US top-ranked schools. So if you're thinking of applying outside the US, like Cherif was, definitely come to our site, touchmba.com, and we'd be glad to give you some free help over there. Now let's get to my conversation with Cherif. Let's go. I'm really excited to interview our next guest. He just got into 2 great business schools, and we're going to break down his journey for you so that you can learn from all his hard-earned lessons going through this whole process. Cherif N'doli is from France, and he was just admitted into Insead and London Business School. Cherif, thank you so much for reaching out, and I'm so glad to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Darren. I'm so glad to be on the show. Actually, when you started with your little introduction, it reminded me like of a podcast I've been listening to. So very happy to be on the show today.
Well, I'm so glad to have listeners like you who tune in every week. So Cherif, let's just get straight to your background first, right? Before we break down kind of your success factors. What were you doing before the MBA? What were you planning to do after? Where did you apply? Did you apply to any other schools? And what was your thinking before you started this whole process?
Okay, well, to give you a little bit of context, so as you mentioned, I'm a French and Ivorian citizen. So what was I doing before the MBA? Basically, I left Paris 2011 for Canada, studying political science at Concordia University in Montreal. Then I moved to the UK for my grad school, so I went for a master's in management. So let's say I was pretty equipped before the MBA, actually. And after graduating, I dived into auditing. So I started as an audit associate at PwC in Luxembourg, then moved on to become a management consultant for quite a bit, for I think almost a year. And then, let's say this is when the reveal came up, and I started a career in infrastructure project finance, joining the most prominent government organization in Côte d'Ivoire. So I was working in everything that happened economically or in terms of development in the country between 2018 and 2021. I've worked on these topics. So this was a very, very great experience. After that, I joined an investment bank, so a local boutique, working on structured finance, so leveraging my background in finance and also all my network to join the firm as a senior associate. Did that for 2 years before relocating to Europe with my wife, as we learned that we were expecting a child. And since then, so since 2023, I've been a senior consultant / project leader we're in the financial advisory and project finance practice of Aegis, which is one of the largest infrastructure operator.
Hmm.
And that's what I'm doing for a year. Yeah.
Wow. So when did you start thinking about getting a second master's degree? Was it when you were in Cote d'Ivoire, or was it when you started to move back to Europe, or when did this happen?
It happened somewhere around 2021. Basically, I was having a discussion with my head of department at the government organization, which is a Stanford MBA graduate, actually. And he was like, okay, so he was giving me a review and say, okay, I think you're a smart guy. You're doing very well here. And yeah, I was promoted twice actually in 2 years. So well, I think that's why he was telling me that. So the thing is, because of the structure of the organization, I don't think you have a future here. Because you can't, you've already reached a glass ceiling and you'll be waiting years before getting promoted again. So my advice to you would be to go out, seek a degree, and come back because the competition here is very fierce. You have graduates from Harvard, people coming from Stanford, from Columbia, etc., and they're all fighting for these big government jobs. So if you want to get in the fight, Cranfield is good, but it can only take you so far because, well, obviously, Cote d'Ivoire has a French heritage, and not many people have heard of Cranfield. So you have to do something to get your name on the map. So I was thinking about first getting a master's. So I was admitted to École des Ponts, which is like a very big school in France, but ended up not going because of personal reasons. So from that point, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm not doing this second master's, okay, but I'll get an MBA at some point. And funny thing, I recently received a letter for myself, Future Me, where you can write yourself letters and that come a couple of years later. And I wrote this letter actually in 2022, telling myself, you need to go get that MBA, and I'm expecting you to get into Insead, which is where I'm going actually. So let's say I already had the vision.
Amazing. Amazing. And then so why INSEAD and why LBS? What was your thinking behind those two schools? And were you considering other programs as well?
Yes, well, I was considering US programs at first. For one particular program was the Columbia Business School program because I wanted think it was best to be in New York City. It was very, very big program, worldwide renowned. So I think he ticked all the boxes for me. The only thing that I didn't want to go to the US because I had a family. I couldn't move my family to the US for many reasons. And that would mean that for 2 years, I won't get to see them that often. Don't think from a father's perspective that was a good thing for a young child. So I had to first, before deciding to which school I'll be going, I had to choose the geography. Obviously, we're living in Luxembourg, so I say, okay, Europe makes sense. So now, what are the best schools in Europe? So obviously, INSEAD and LBS. I dived into the programs, realized that both were very strong in finance. One may be stronger than the other, but at the end of the day, both are very strong in finance. So I say, okay, I think I'll just go with these two and I'll make it work. So yeah, this was rationally. Also, another thing, they're offering 1 year programs, which is also a big decision factor for me. The thing is, maybe contrary to many students eyeing the US, I'm not actually transitioning from one sector to another. I think we'll discuss that in detail maybe a little later, but I'm transitioning from a role to another. So from being an advisor slash investment banker to become a private equity investor, but within the infrastructure space. So let's say it wasn't a big leap for me. I don't think that I needed a 2 year program to achieve that. So 1 year program was also a must for me.
Yeah. Crystal clear, crystal clear. And so was that the goal you mentioned of moving into private equity in infrastructure sector? Essentially, was that the career post MBA career goal you presented to both schools?
Yes, exactly. That's what I'm going for. And yes, I think all the experience I've built up so far kind of prepared me for this kind of position. Now it's about my own ability to make the leap. I have a mentor actually with because I joined a mentorship program, and she's yeah, one of the top prominent like development investors in France for infrastructure. And she told me, well, I don't know why you're getting an MBA because I think you can get this job by yourself right now. But the thing is, I was like, no, if you want to do something, do it well. I transitioned from public sector to private sector, so from political science to the business world without knowing where I was going and without giving it a real serious thought. Now that I'm more mature, I have more work experience, I'll say, okay, I want to transition to private equity. I know it's very competitive, and I don't want to be just an associate or a manager at any private equity firm. I want to be very, very good and get my name on the map, actually. And to do that, I think an MBA program can prepare me. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, that was rationally for me.
Yeah. I mean, so before we get into your success factors again, like, how did you find this mentor? That's kind of interesting. And yeah, let me start there and then I have one more question.
Oh, there is a professional association for young infrastructure professionals in France
Oh, cool.
called Infravenir. And I joined this association, I think, 2 years ago. And this year they were launching the second edition of their mentorship program, so I just applied. And I think that all come about at the right time because of also just right after getting my admission to the MBA. So the 6 months, like 6 to 9 months I had before starting my MBA, I've been working with this mentor. So she has been preparing me, giving me the insights on the sector, where do I have to focus, and yeah, sharing
I
all
love that.
knowledge and preparing before this MBA. And she actually got the MBA herself. So.
I love that. I think that's such a like, if that's possible for our listeners, that's such a cheat code in a way because you're getting prepped for the role you're moving into while you're going through the MBA instead of like going to get your master's degree and then what am I doing or like what are people looking for? So I think that's really great. And then my second question is, I mean, you did move around in a number of roles, as you mentioned, that all have led you to this point. How did you go from, PwC and management consulting to working for the Cote d'Ivoire government? Like, how did you make that jump? I can understand going from that work to what you're doing now, right? That makes more sense to me.
Well, how did I do that? Let's say I was, when I got out of grad school, I had no idea what I was doing, to be honest. Last time I was checking through my email and I saw that I even applied to marketing jobs, to PR jobs, like things like completely remote because I had no idea what I'd be doing. Then I met another mentor of mine when I was in Cote d'Ivoire because I took like a year gap in Cote d'Ivoire, working for my
Got
family
you.
business and also getting to know my country better because I've been living in France since I was 7. And I met this guy that at the time was a senior manager at a big accounting firm, and that is now the deputy CEO of the largest oil company in the country. And we were discussing it was okay. I see that you don't know what you want to do. So my advice to you is to go to a big four and just become an auditor because everybody loves auditors and you have time to figure out what you want to do. Eventually, if you want to go to strategy consulting, to finance, corporate finance, M&A, given this basis, you'll have a choice. So let's say that joining PwC was like getting a second master, like getting a master's in finance. So that's how I made sure I joined PwC and moved on to management consulting. But still, I wasn't satisfied. So 2 years later, 3 years later, I was still unsatisfied. So I was like, okay, well, I've studied. I think I went to good institutions, but I'm still not very happy at my job. It's interesting, it's okay, but it's not the thrill I was looking for. And so I knew that the HR director of this government organization was a speaker at a conference in Paris. So I took a day
Wow.
off and I went to this conference, and one of my very close friend was in the logistics staff of the conference. So I said, "Can you get me 5 minutes with this guy?" He's like, "Yeah, no, complicated. The guy is way higher up. I can't do that. But if I see that at some point he's alone, I'll call you, and then you make your magic." I said, okay, I'll take you on that. So I went, I was on conference and he was indeed alone for a couple of minutes. So my friend called me and said, you need to come now. So I went, I was like, okay, I sat in front of him and said, hi, sir. Nice to meet you. My name is Cherif, blah, blah, blah. I would like to work for you. How do I make it happen? He started laughing. He was like, you can't be serious. What do you want to do for me? I said, I've been at PwC. I've been a management consultant. I'm very smart. I've been following all the work your organization has been doing. I want to join this organization. How do I do that? He said, oh, we have an opening. We're looking for a project finance guy. Can you do that? I said, yes, not knowing what project finance was, but I said, yes. And then, so I said, okay, I'll get you an interview. And a couple of months later, I got an interview, HTV interview, and got an offer.
Wow. Wow. That's a great story. That's a great story. That's like, it almost sounds like a movie.
Yeah,
but clearly you had the background, you had spent time there before, you're from there, your family's from there. So that's wow, that's really jumping on the opportunity. That's amazing.
yes, yes. As you say, when I know that coming to the job, I didn't have the skills, to be honest. I was good with accounting because I was an auditor, so I knew myself around, but I didn't have the skills. I couldn't model. They asked me if I could. I said yes, but I couldn't. So I had 3 months before coming to the job, so I learned everything before. So I learned. So the day one when I came, I know I was ready. And the thing is that, as you mentioned, is being ready for the opportunity to come. And I had the 5 minutes to make it work. And then after that, I have 3 months to get ready before the start of a job. I use these 3 months to get ready.
Yeah. Wow. Are you getting ready for your MBA in any way?
Yes, actually, I found out a book about private equity recruiting. I think it's getting into private equity. And it's a book where they speak about the industry, what are the skills the firms are looking for according to the roles you're aiming at. And they also give you case studies about different people and how they broke into private equity. So it's a 200 pages book. You don't need to read everything because you only read what's relevant to you. So you have, pre-MBA people, post-MBA people, blah, 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 etc. And yes, I'm reading this every night. So I think when an interview comes, I will be ready also.
That's great. That's great. All right. Well, let's kind of recap your journey. I actually asked you to prepare like a reflection, right? That we could use as a basis for our discussion. And I'll be sure to post what you've written very clearly, very beautifully, very directly on the show notes to this episode so everyone can read what you wrote if they prefer that way. But let's get started. So yeah, which one do you want to start with?
Yeah, let's start with
I'll give you the choice.
being focused.
Okay, let's go. So tell me why you think this is important. What it means and why it's important.
Yeah, what it means to me is that, again, a little bit of context. As I mentioned, I was thinking about getting an MBA since 2021, but I didn't make any move for that. I tried a couple of times to study for the GRE, GMAT, but after a couple of weeks, I just quit. So
it's not fun.
really not fun, especially with my background in math, because in France, when you go to high school, you need to choose a stream, and I chose the literary stream, which means no math. So I didn't even know how to perform an equation before. So yeah, I was very good at financial modeling, but equation, nothing. So really not fun. But when I pictured, I think I was in holiday with my wife and son, and I sometimes say, you know what, next year I'm going to business school. So every single minute I had when we were sleeping or out, I started studying my GRE. And from that point on, I was focused, and I didn't lose any focus until I get what I believe could be the minimum score for me to get in those schools, which was 320 actually. So it was very, on the limits of what it can be deemed good. It's not like a very, very good score actually. So yeah, so first thing, focus is about breathing, sleeping, thinking MBA, all during the preparation process. And I think what really sets the MBA experience apart from applying for a master's degree or even for undergrad, because you must picture yourself, visualize yourself already in the schools or already getting that admission. And so you know that every action you make from that point has to lead you to this destination. So yeah, for around, I think it took me 5 months of preparation, 5 or 6 months of preparation, I think 5 months. And for those 5 months, every single day, after 8, I was staying at the office until 10, 11, working on my quant score. To be honest, I think I didn't even spend 10 hours on the verbal thing. I was sure I was good enough. I could ace it without much effort. But the quant thing, I said, I was coming from very, very far. So I had to repeat again for 5 months until I was more or less ready and I could actually get, let's say, minimum score. So yes, this is what I believe is focus. This is what I believe is very important. When you're applying to MBA, you need to keep your focus on your goal. If you lose focus and say, "Oh, I'm applying to MBA, but I'm also applying to a master in finance, but I'm also applying to an MPA," and see what pans out, I'm pretty sure you won't get any admission, or at least not from the MBA side, because they can feel it from your application. I think
Mm-hmm.
in terms of essays, I
Mm.
wrote maybe 15 version, no, yeah, maybe 20, 25 version of essays while I'm already a writer. So I write for newspapers and magazine. So I think I'm pretty good writer. And still, it took me like 20, 25 versions before getting a good application.
Wow. So yeah, we're going to dive into those essays for sure, because I would love to learn from your experience there. But I think what I found really interesting about what you just said, two things. One is you have to imagine yourself in these schools. Okay. So that's number one. And number two, you said they can feel it when you apply. They can feel your focus. They can feel the intensity. Let's put it that way. How, like, when you're imagining yourself in this school, did that influence how you thought about what you were doing? I mean, obviously focusing on getting the minimum GMAT score. That's definitely crucial, right? But did that affect kind of how you approached this whole process in any other way?
Yes, yes, definitely. Because as I mentioned, like being focused is also, trying to collect all the information you can. And that's actually I got in touch with you. I was looking on
Yep.
the internet where I could get very good information on MBAs. I've been listening to a podcast for the past 6 months before reaching out to you. So I listened to almost all interviews you had with even like execs from school I didn't want to go to, but I knew I could get some information there. And I tried to blend it all and say, okay, now I think I can contact Darren and ask for a profile review. And this was also for an idea to get to know what were my strengths and how I could communicate those in my essay. So everything is related. So you need to, as I say, yeah, listen to podcasts to good material because there's also some bad material out there. So, so definitely
Yes,
listen
there
to
is.
Be in Touch, get all the information you can by attending, campus tours, etc. Going to recruitment forums. I think like even after application, I still went to recruitment forums to meet the guys just to make sure they knew my name. And I think yeah, one of the recruiters like recognized me very well because they'll say, "Oh, I know you, Sheriff. How you doing? Did you apply?" I said,
Yes.
"Yeah, I applied a couple of weeks ago." He said, "Okay, I hope you get in, etc." But just make sure that everybody knows who I am, and this is the kind of
I love
focus
that.
I'm speaking about. Yeah, it's a MBA is said to be a life-changing experience. So if you want to get into a life-changing experience, you must dedicate yourself to getting your foot onto a doorstep. Because if you don't, as I mentioned, they'll feel it. They say, oh, he says he wants to go into finance, but he didn't realize that our school is very strong on private equity, but not so much on investment banking. And he says he wants to be an investment banker. Well, why is he coming here? See, they'll sense that.
Yeah. Love that. Love that. And you also, one more thing you mentioned in your writing is that it also means cultivating a habit of recording every thought or idea that could enhance your application, whether it's a personal memory, a current event, or a casual conversation, anything that can spark insight for your essays. So did you have like a full, 8 by 11 notebook full your
Well, I have my
encounters, or
iPhone
how were
full.
you doing this? Just storing them in your head, or what?
No, I've been using my iPhone. So as I mentioned, because I was always thinking about MBA and getting to the schools, every time I had an idea, I just write it on my iPhone. Say, okay, you have questions. So I had all the question in different sections, and every
There
time
you
an
go.
idea comes up, I go. So, for example, at LBS, you have a question: what makes you unique? Well, this is kind of difficult question to answer. So every time I had some little thing that made me unique or set apart from others, I'll write it down. And then when I sit down to write my essay, I'll select what is the best thing or what makes me the most unique in relation, obviously, to this MBA. Because if you say you're a pole dancer at school, but that won't get you into an MBA. So
Maybe if you started the biggest pole dancing business in the world or
exactly.
something, who knows? Yeah. So let's talk about those essays. And I just want to highlight a point because Cherif, you're a writer. I've also write as well, and maybe you can relate to this. Oftentimes, it takes a while for your best ideas to kind of settle, or if not settle, emerge from all the other ideas. At least for me, I find that over time, maybe I think one day, oh, this is a really good idea for an essay or, whatever I'm writing. But then I look at that idea in 3 weeks and I'm thinking, oh, no, 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 that's not interesting or what have you. So if you give these ideas some time to kind of emerge or, turn them over in your mind, I feel more time allows for better material. I don't know. Do you feel that way?
Oh, completely. Definitely feel
Yeah.
that way.
Okay.
As I mentioned, like took me 20, 25 versions to get my essays right. So yeah, if
Yeah.
you look at my
Yeah.
first version, I'll be starting off some anecdotes of some experiences, but are completely different to what you can find in my final version of the essays. So yeah, that's also why I advise people to write down every idea you have, because when you look back at this idea, maybe 2 or 3 weeks from when you wrote it down, then you can have better judgment, because there's always excitement with a
For
new thing.
sure.
When you write something new, you say, "Oh, this is the best thing I've ever wrote," etc. But when you take a step back and look at it a couple of weeks later, you say, "Ah, nah, this is not as good," or "This is very brilliant. I should go further." So yeah, so I advise people. That's also why you need to start very early on, because it takes time to craft a very compelling
Exactly.
essay.
So yeah, let's talk about the essays, and maybe this would be, I think, number 4 of your success factors, which would be peer review, and maybe number 5 as well, working with a consultant. So let's take that LBS essay. What makes you different? And maybe you can walk us through that one essay, what you were thinking, what anecdotes you thought were interesting at the beginning, and then what it turned into at the end, and that whole process.
Okay, so first thing, as I mentioned, I took my list of what would set me apart from other people and start crossing out everything that I didn't think was relevant enough. So I don't know, won a basketball championship in high school, cool, but not good enough. I don't
Why,
know,
why, why not good enough? Why not good enough? That sounds pretty good.
because I didn't want to become a professional basketball player, anything, and so it was good at my level, but wasn't good like to be, to turn this out into a leadership thing, etc. I think you can always make something out of a little story, but again,
Yes.
the way I see
Yes.
it is you're trying to get in one of the most competitive schools in the world. So this means like most applicants will get rejected. I also did my research on that. I saw that, yeah, I think rejection at RBS somewhere around, I think 85% or something. So this means only 15 people out of 100 are getting in. So, and so if it comes down to me, I need to give my best shot. And so that's why, yeah,
No pun intended. No pun intended with the
exactly.
basketball.
So I crossed out everything that I didn't think
Okay.
was strong enough. And yeah, when I got my story, I wrote the first essay. I shared it with a couple of friends. They gave me the review. But again, as you said, when you take some time to mature an idea, you can get a better perspective. So a couple of months later, I think 2 months later, I read it again. I was like, no, this won't get me into LBS in Insead. No, 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 no. Because those were my friends, but maybe they don't know the stakes and they have never been in outcomes. So I didn't have a chance. If I had a friend Had I been in AdCom, I would have said it to him right away, but I didn't. So I was like, okay, maybe I should ask the question in a different way and start asking my friends and family, what do you think makes me unique? Maybe you have a better answer than I do have. So I asked my
Interesting.
wife,
Mm-hmm.
she's my most trusted advisor, asked my brother, a couple of very close friends. I say, what do you think makes me unique? Obviously, they start laughing at me every time, but at the end of the day, they gave me like a couple of hints. And yeah, it gave me the right perspective to identify what was my uniqueness in relationship to applying to the MBA. And from that point on, I was able to develop a compelling story to tell the outcome. And I think basically this story was me. So I think I played around, I think I played. I think, hey, I built something around being from a Christian and Muslim heritage, having studied both religions. So went to Sunday school, also went to Muslim teaching school, and having the freedom to choose my own religion, and keeping in mind
Wow.
that yes, I have to be open to a world, and actually I can be a representative of both religions. So when I hear Christian people speak bad things about Muslims, I defend them, and I'll do also the same thing the other way around. And I think this kind of uniqueness and openness to the world is what gave me a perspective of wanting to be in a job that will actually impact lives, but also help me settle everywhere in the world I went. I mentioned I lived in North America, lived in Africa, lived in Europe, I worked in Asia, and I won. For instance, when I went to Indonesia, I wasn't like I didn't feel very foreign. Of course, as I always do, I did my homework before coming. So, okay, this is the culture, this is how they think, learned a couple of words. This can sound very cringy, but the thing is, if you go somewhere, I think the least you can do is to learn how to say hello, thank you, goodbye. And then starting speaking with them, what do you think of your country? Who has been the important political figures in your country? Why, etc., etc. And in those 2 weeks, I think, yeah, I was very, very integrated, like very quick. And this helped in my work because from that point on, I could easily get information from the client and also gain the trust. So when I was presenting my findings, they're okay because it felt true to themselves. So that's why I played around in here what Jesus said about being unique. So using my own experience, and this came because I spoke with all my friends, etc., and they were able to give me say, "Oh, what is unique about you? Is this your way to see the world? So now you have to make it work." And I had this. All of this was refined by working with a consultant. But maybe we can expand on that.
Yeah. Well, wow. So did you include the story or anecdote about you going to Indonesia and kind of integrating yourself into that business culture quickly? Was that part of one or two of your essays, or was that just an example you mentioned
No, this was also
for
part
this?
of another essay, I think for Insead this time.
Yes. Yes. Well, what I love about this example is you're not saying something like, well, you are saying it. You are saying that I'm an international person. I have an open mind. I can understand both these, these two major religions. I can understand both of them, talk to people from both of them. And you're talking about your background and this experience, like this one experience going to Indonesia, but you're not saying directly like, I'm an international person. I mean, you are saying it through your story, is what I'm saying. You're showing it, you're not telling it, which I think is very powerful.
Thank you.
Maybe you're telling it in the last sentence or two of your essay, right? Like these experiences allow me to have a more open mind and a broader perspective. And that's exactly what a place like INSEAD is looking for, right? So you could kind of summarize it, but it's your life story is showing all the traits that they're looking for. I think that's much more powerful than just saying like, I am smart, I am international. A lot of applicants do that, but sure, but like, give me the story or tell me why this is really who you are, right? In the way you did. So, okay, let's talk about the consultant, working with a consultant. Yeah, I'll just leave it open ended. I mean, I think one thing you mentioned in your writing was you must be clear on what you need help with. I underlined that. So maybe, yeah, we could use that as a starting point, or feel free to share whatever you think our audience could benefit from.
Oh, yes, definitely. One thing with working with consultants is that you must know what you're looking for in your consultant. At first, because I'm very confident in myself, I said, I thought I didn't need a consultant. I said, oh, the consultant will only be here to polish your writing, etc. This I can do it myself, maybe with some help of ChatGPT writer or any AI. So I don't really need a consultant. But going down the road, I realized that again, what are the stakes? I'm on the verge of investing 100K plus euro in a
Serious.
training
Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
The consultant may cost me at most maybe 1,000 euro. Am I willing to invest to get what I want, or I rather take my chances with the outcome? And from that point on, it was a no-brainer. Of course, I will invest. But again, not investing in thinking that the consultant will do all the work for me. And I think that's a mistake some people make. They think that, okay, if I get a very, very good consultant, because I've seen that some consultant give you like $20,000 packages, etc. Well, why not? I think they may be very smart and very helpful. But this may fit a particular type of students. The students maybe that really needs help from day one up to the to sending the application. But you need to select a consultant that can actually understand your vision because there's also a cultural trait to what you're doing. So if you're a French applicant, working with someone that understands France or understands the uniqueness of growing up in France, working there, etc., might be more helpful to you than the best UK consultant, for instance, because he might not understand the underlyings of your stories. So for me, it was yes, selecting someone that could understand what was the power in my story and help me express it better. But because I mentioned that I'm a strong writer, I wanted to get all of the work done before contacting anyone. So it took me some
Interesting.
time
Okay.
actually. So I only
Yeah.
worked with a consultant, let's say maybe 2 months before applying, because I want to make sure that everything was done and then we can start talking. But at the same time, I was open to amending everything. So if the consultant gave me a review and say, okay, you know what, this question, you got it completely wrong, you need to restart fresh. Okay, why not? If you can convince me that I need to start fresh, why not? But you need really to know what you're expecting from these people and also recognize that this is expertise and expertise has a price tag. The thing is, like, sometimes people say, oh, no, $300 an hour. No, that's too much. I can pay $200 for a CV review. I can pay for this. No, you can pay for all of that, but you can pay $200,000 for a training program. Okay. I don't know how you do your math, but this is kind of bizarre to me. So,
Yes.
yes, make sure you know what you're looking for. What are your strongest areas? What are your weaknesses too? And then go on to find someone on the market if I can match that and help you achieve your goals. That's what I could say.
Absolutely. So let's make that specific to your case. You did all the writing beforehand. You wanted to get your best stories out basically first. So I'm guessing you were looking for help with your essays more than
Yes.
anything, or maybe you can talk about what services you were looking for, how you viewed your strengths and weaknesses.
Okay. Yes, so I was definitely getting help only for my essays. The thing is, first, I think I took a 1 hour tutoring for my quant, or my GRE quant. But the tutor was very brilliant, actually. But the thing is, I couldn't understand the value of that. I was like, okay, but he's showing me the tricks to get around the questions, but he won't put the knowledge in my brain. So the only way to get this done is to study by myself. And I think this is very particular to me because of the way I study. So this might not be good advice for someone else. Some people maybe are more, vocal, they need tutoring, etc. But up to that point, I'd never worked with a tutor in my life. So maybe that's why I couldn't understand the value of it. But definitely, this is not, it's not on him, it's on me. So yeah, I only needed help for my essays, and yes, as you mentioned, yeah, I did everything was ready beforehand, and I was just looking for someone that could understand my story and help me get it better, get it to the admission committee the best way possible. Also knowing, keep in mind that I'm not a native English speaker. I think you can hear that. So this also was a determining factor.
Yes. So did you use this consultant for all your essays for both schools, or how did you kind of go about that?
Yes, I worked with her for all my essays for both schools and also for scholarship essays actually.
Mm, very good. Yep.
Because again, you're trying to get, I don't know, 40,000 euro or 30,000 pounds from an institution. If you have to invest 500 euros for that, I think that's a good deal.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And we should mention you were able to win a very big scholarship from London Business School.
Yes.
So it's you think her expertise helped?
Actually, I think for London Business School, there was no specific writing for the essays, if I remember well. No, for the scholarship, sorry. So there was no specific essay for scholarship.
Ah,
But for
okay.
Insead, there was a specific essay. So, but all in all, I would say that her expertise helped. I didn't get the scholarship in Insead, true, but I don't think it's because my essay was not good enough. And that's also a thing, because if you're working with someone and you recognize their expertise and you know that after submitting you have given your best shot, but still don't have what you were looking for, then actually you have the satisfaction. Oh yeah, I think yeah, I didn't get the scholarship because maybe people had more compelling stories, better GRE scores, I guess. So this might have played a role in it. Also, I applied to what is normally round two for other schools, but for Insead, this is round three because there are 4 rounds. So I understand that I was quite late in the game. So this added to that wasn't I didn't get the scholarship. But again, I think yeah, I had the best essay, conveying the best ideas and stories that I could.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Just be satisfied you gave it your all, which goes back to the first point, right? Focus. I think we kind of covered. Oh, do you want to share who that consultant was, or I can put it in the show notes? I'm sure people are like, "Oh, who is this person?"
Yes, I can. I can definitely. Her name is London. She is actually, I think now she's a second year MBA student at what's it, Columbia Business School. And why I decided to work with her first because, as I said, she could understand me from a cultural standpoint. But second thing is she in her application process, I remember she applied to 7 schools. Like in, I think those 7 schools were the top schools of this will be Harvard, Columbia, etc. And she got 5 full scholarships. So I was like, okay, I think this lady can write.
Yeah, she has the track record
Yeah.
for sure. Got it. Okay. Well, let's go to point number 2. So we've talked about focus. That's a success factor. Success factor 2, peer review. So getting feedback from your peers, your wife, your most trusted advisor, mentors, etc., who can help figure out what's your best story, what makes you interesting, what makes you different. And then we've also talked about success factor 3, working with a consultant, being clear on what you need help with and finding the right consultant for you. Let's talk about number 4, self-awareness, because I think this is also related to what we just talked about, right? I'll just share a bit of what you wrote here because I think it's very good. So self-awareness is your most powerful tool in presenting an authentic and compelling narrative. Okay. You mentioned how you've always had a strong ability to self-assess. You mentioned that admissions committees look for applicants who can articulate their strengths with confidence, but also acknowledge their development areas with humility. The best applicants demonstrate maturity, emotional intelligence, and a clear understanding of how an MBA fits into their personal and professional growth journey. Self-awareness shows you're ready to learn, grow, and receive feedback, qualities that are foundational for MBA success. So I think you put that really well, where you're towing this balance between confidence in your abilities, but also humility and self-awareness that I'm not the best at everything and I have weaknesses as well that I need to improve on. And so like towing that middle ground, I guess you could call it that, or I don't know how you would describe it, is I think often very challenging for applicants to convey in their essays and in their interviews. So I would love to hear, how you felt you did that, or any kind of lessons you learned along the way, having gone through the video interviews, the real interviews, all the essays, etc.
Yes, well, self-awareness, from my perspective, is maybe the key to getting into business school. The thing
Let's
is,
talk. Yeah.
yeah, for me, it was the starting point of even the reflection of applying to business school. It's like, okay, where am I at in terms of career journey? And am I a competitive candidate for an MBA? And you should be able to answer this question honestly. It's not, do I want to get it in the MBA? Do I want to go to Harvard, to Insead, to LBS? That's not the question, whether I want it or not. The question is, am I competitive enough for these schools? And if the answer was no, I'll be looking for something else. Maybe get my CFA, maybe go to a master in finance, because at the end of the day, if I want to go to private equity, finance is good also. So this year, you need to know where you stand. You may be very strong and very competitive candidate for a master in finance, but maybe not so for MBA, because in terms of leadership skills, of ability to take the lead, or in terms of mindset, this might not be a good experience for you, and the school again may sense that, because what we're trying to do is not just to get the best test scorers. What we're trying to do is to put together a cohort that can blend in together and develop strong bonds. So after school, this class will work together as a group to lift each other's to the best positions in the market, in the job market. That's what I believe actually, and I think I got to learn about that by again listening to MBA Touch, because there are so many
Yeah.
directors giving these kind of
Yes.
insights.
Many.
So I was okay. This is what they want. Am I what they want? So these are the first thing. But then after that, the idea is to understand what am I good at and what are my development areas. You may call it weakness, but because you need to be politically correct, we call it development areas. But I know, yeah, I'm good with numbers. Personally, yeah, I'm good with numbers. I'm a good sweet talker. I can get, yeah, I'm quite a social guy, so I can get friends easily. I blend into cultures easily, extra. So those are my strengths. Okay. Are very relevant strengths to the school. Like earlier on you mentioned, okay, you're a good candidate for INSEAD because you're international. This is what INSEAD is looking for. But is LBS looking for international at the same level? Not sure. Maybe INSEAD gives it, I don't know, a 50 out of 100 weight score, while LBS only gives it a 20. So this means you're very competitive for INSEAD, but not so much for LBS. So need to find the balance here. Again, those scores are completely fictional. I don't know how we do.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think they both want, super international applicants if possible. But yeah, yeah.
So,
I your point is taken though. Yep.
yeah, so this is how I approach it. So, okay, I know my strengths and I need to find a way to convey them in the most compelling manner to the admission committee. Then I know I have development areas. And if I had known, then I shouldn't apply to an MBA. Because the thing is, if you're investing that much money into a training program, but you have nothing to improve, then you should
Yeah.
invest.
Then
I
yeah.
think you can
It's
make.
good. Great point. Great point. Great point.
So yeah, so in terms of presenting to the admission committee the rationale for my application, especially being quite at, yeah, I think I'll be more one of the oldest in the cohort, most probably. So you need to say, okay, at this stage at my career, I'm applying to your MBA program because I want to grow in this particular area. for me, it was leadership. I've been supervisors to analysts, to associates, etc., to interns, etc. But I want to be sure that when I get to private equity, because it's at the crossroads of being a finance guy, but also an entrepreneur, that I can communicate my vision and drive clearly to the people I'll be working with, whether they be under my supervision or maybe they be higher up actually. But I need them to understand what is my vision and how I'm going to lead this transaction and make it successful. So, and for that, I believe that yes, I need to refine my leadership skills. I cannot just count on talent. This this is no go for me. This was a big rationale of me applying to an MBA. Also, I'm a finance guy. I like to say in interviews, I'm a finance guy that only took one finance course throughout my education.
Yeah.
So the thing is, at this stage of my career, I like to solidify my finance abilities. So yeah, I know how to model again. I can read financial statements, I understand most of the material, etc. And maybe at the end of maybe if we speak like in 1 year from now, I'll tell you I didn't learn a lot. But that's not the point. The point is you need to make sure that what you know is good enough for what you want to do. And the only way to do that again is to grow through this program, from my perspective, actually. Maybe different from someone else's perspective. So yeah, again, so as I mentioned, it's about being aware of your strengths, aware of your weaknesses and development areas, and then you need to blend that together to communicate to the admission committee and tell them, okay, you know what? If you take a chance on me in the court, you'll have a student that can do this and that needs to grow in this particular area, and I know that your institution can help me to get there. And once I'm there, I can tell you that I'll be one of the greatest ambassadors of your institution. But
Yes. There you
do
go.
that you need to help me.
I love that you said ambassador because for me that's a huge part of it. I mean, I'm glad. I almost feel like you're articulating what I've tried to articulate on this podcast better than I can. But yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. That's so clear, and I hope everyone can replay what you just said. And I think that's exactly the mindset you need to succeed. Let me talk about when it comes to self-awareness and kind of your story. You being on the, let's say, more experienced scale or end. So you're coming in with 9 years of experience, right? 8, 9 years of experience. You already have your master's in management, as you mentioned. You have all this, you've worked in 5 different roles. Did you get a lot of questions about that in terms of like, oh, well, why did you work for 5 companies before applying? That's a lot. Or why are you applying now when you already have a master's degree and you have 8, 9 years of experience?
I actually never got that question during the MBA process. I've got this question a lot when I'm applying to jobs. They always ask, oh, why do you change companies, etc. But I'll give you the answer. I think I didn't have this question during my interviews because I was able to articulate the rationale behind my career journey. And if you think about it, it's the career journey of someone. Oh, and also, I didn't mention that, but I'm first generation going to university. So my parents didn't go. And so I couldn't get support from them, in terms of, guiding me through a career path, etc. Fortunately enough, as I mentioned to you, because I'm quite a social guy, I reach out to people. This mentor I told you in the oil sector now is someone I met on LinkedIn. I was researching his profile, say, okay, I want to talk to this guy, and then we created a bond from there. So, I had to work to get the connections that can give me a way to draw a career line. But this only happens step by step. So some people going to university know about investment banking. To be honest, I learned about investment banking only after being an auditor. So I think I was by the time maybe 25, 26. I didn't even know that
Yeah.
existed. If it had
Yeah.
known, to be honest, I think this is a career I would have pursued right after undergraduate.
Sure. Sure.
So
Yep.
because of these small steps, we are starting as an auditor at PwC. Also, these are small steps, but let's say those are marketable steps. Because the thing is, yeah, I'm an audit associate, but at PwC, I'm not an audit associate at a firm that nobody had never heard of. Yeah, especially in Luxembourg, which is the biggest financial sector in Europe, financial center in Europe. So after that, I moved to management consulting. The firm was a little bit less renowned, but it was a 1,000 consultant firm, so quite a big firm for Europe. Then moved to project finance. This was a big leap. This is when there is a big change. But again, because I had this job by smooth talking the HR director, there was no question about my background before that. You just want to make sure that I had the skills. I was able to communicate well and to to ace the interview, I would say. And then I prepared before coming to the job, so they never noticed that I didn't have the skills when I started the job actually itself. And then after that, investment banking, and after that, joining Aegis at a more senior role. So if you look at it, it's coherent. You start learning the basics of accounting because when you're out of school, we realize that you don't have an accounting or finance degree. You own your advisory skills by being a management consultant, so working with C-suite clients. Then you move on to project finance and financial advisory in your country. You become an investment banker, and then you move on again to financial advisory, project finance in a global scale firm. The story can hold up as long as you know how to communicate it, especially when you explain the rationale behind it. That these are small steps. It's never one big step because I didn't know about the grad programs, etc. Maybe I was too lazy at the time to research, or actually I wasn't lazy. The thing is, but I was really, really focused on becoming an international public servant. But the experience at the cabinet office was very good. So the cabinet office is the ministerial department supporting the UK Prime Minister. So this is very, very prestigious. But after 3 months, I realized that no, this is definitely not the career path for me. I need to go back to numbers. So yes, you can communicate, okay, this was a mistake. I didn't research enough. I didn't get myself ready at the earlier stage. But the thing is, I do have the skills that make me competitive for this position, or for the instance, make me competitive for this MBA program. So the focus should not be on why did I not make the right choices right away. Your focus should be on look at what I've achieved so far now. And again, always achieving this in quite prestigious institutions. So you can understand that, okay, if they have been able to take a bet on me, I think you can too.
Right. Right. You're signaling some sort of you're making it a less risky proposition for the MBA. I mean, that's essentially what the big brands help with, right? The schools say, well, if you've worked for these, you know, reputable institutions, that's some sort of quality signal. But I like how you describe that as making the connections to draw a career line. There are some people that, and I am envious of them. They know exactly what they want to do from the start. They see the path A, B, C, D, getting them to E, and it's just click, click, click. But I think the vast majority of people have careers that don't quite work that way. And there's some zigging and zagging involved for sure as you figure out what you're interested in and what you're good at and what you're not good at. And I can say as a former admissions person that we understand that. The key thing is kind of the delta between your jumps and what you're learning from them. In other words, like maybe, yeah, you worked for in the UK government because you're a political science major. You realize, wow, this is not really the career I want, at least right now. What did you learn from that and how did you apply it? Those are the bigger questions that I think people on the admission side want to hear about because essentially you're going to be doing this through your entire career, right? So if you're not learning from these, you don't even call them mistakes. Let's just call them this direction you went and then you shifted to another direction. We just want to know why you made those decisions and what you got out of it. Like, and I think that's kind of a different way of saying what you just said, but that's great. I have one more question on this point. When you're asking, when you said the important question is, am I competitive? Right? How do you get early indications of that before you actually apply? I mean, there's a self-assessment for sure, which you did. But I mean, I know you came to our site, Touch MBA, right, to give yourself an idea as well. But how else did you get signals of that? Because that's a really, I like how you phrase that. That's a really key question. How did you get more data points there?
Okay, I think this was a multifaceted approach. First thing is, I think, yeah, on my own self-assessment. So going on LinkedIn, see, okay, who are the students from the previous cohorts. Went also to a campus tour in a campus tour in Insead. Spoke with a couple of students, had an exchange about my background, and many of them were like, "Oh, I think you're inside material. I think you should apply." But I think that's something they tell to everybody. So I couldn't take it for granted. I say, okay. So first step, validation from current students, and I could see that my skills are quite aligned with skills and experience, are quite aligned with what they're expecting from students. So this was the first. Second was to get validation from, again, my peers. So this will be, as I mentioned, my most trusted advisor, my wife, but also people around me. I say, okay, I'll be applying to INSEAD and LBS. I'll also add Columbia in and see what are the reactions. Like if your reactions are, I mean, you're never getting in. I think, okay, so my career may be not that brilliant, but if your reaction or, oh, wow, okay, I think you'll be a good candidate, or I think you can make it. And you can tell when this is just an encouragement or this is like a candid, when it's very sincere, you can tell, okay, they believe that you can actually make it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I
I like
got
that.
those reviews
Yep.
from a couple of people, also from a friend of a friend, which was also applying to business school. And I told her, okay, this is my career, this is what I've been doing so far. I'll be applying to LBS in Seattle next year. And she was, I think you'll get it. I think you, with this career, for sure you'll get it. She was more unsure about herself than about me. So I was like, okay, so if a lot of people think I'm competitive, maybe I am. But again, you need to go further. And that's when you came into the equation. And I was researching and I said, okay, I found that MBA touch thing. I also realized that there was somebody I knew that contacted you years ago. Again, an inside graduate, a guy from my country I had met in a casual occasion. And I said, okay, so if you went through that and then got into INSEAD, okay, maybe I should also give it a try and say, okay, if they give me an answer, I was very surprised when you answered me actually. I was like, maybe this guy is very too busy, so I'll just, you won't answer me, but at least I would have tried. And yeah, when you told me, okay,
Yeah.
this, from your perspective, those are my strengths, and I was like, okay, some of it I agreed with you, some of it I had never thought about it. And when I say, okay, but this is very relevant actually. And when you say, you know what, yeah, inside the RBS are definitely targets for you. I was like, okay, you know what, that's a signal. I think I have enough validation now, and I think I am competitive. And well, all of this is besides the fact that, as I said, I'm very self-confident. So if you ask me, I'm competitive for everything. So, so yeah.
I love that. I love that. And honestly, sometimes you need a little bit of that. I mean, one of my most popular posts actually was this lady who submitted her profile. And I think at the time I said, I think you're kind of a stretch to UT Austin, to be honest. I mean, with the profile you sent me. And she applied and she got in and she was like, hey, I got in. But, and I wrote about why we evaluated her as a stretch. And so sometimes, even the quote unquote experts, they're not the people, right? They're not the admissions directors. I mean, I do think our service is helpful, but sometimes you need a little bit of that self-confidence as well to just say, screw it. I'm just gonna still apply to my dream school,
Of course.
So that is a big factor, I think.
No, I think definitely it is. Again, maybe the way I sound is that, okay, you need validation from other people before believing in yourself, but definitely not. as I mentioned, I'm very self-confident. So for me, I already had my own validation, but validation from being realistic, because that's also, I think that's also what you need to be.
Exactly. Exactly.
Not sure
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
if if you ask a question right after I quit PwC and say, do you think you're competitive for Insead? I would have said no. I would say no, sorry, not yet, because I don't have, those experiences that can make me stand out. But I knew after my experience in the government organization in Cote d'Ivoire that I was competitive already at this time. I just didn't put the work in to apply. So maybe if I applied in 2021, I would have got in, I believe. But I just need to make, I think I had other priorities. So if it happened in 2025, it's because it was meant to happen at this time. But the thing is, you need to be true to yourself and say, if you really believe that you can make it to a school, then apply. And if you believe you can, but are not sure, you know what, just apply anyway. It's just $200 an application. So this will not bankrupt you. But again, make sure also that you also have other people opinion, because at the end of the day, it's not like, I think, yeah, going to University of Austin, Texas, I think this all the students from your school can go to Harvard and get their degree. So it's not about the ability of scoring good enough grades to get the degree. That's not the point. The point is Harvard is looking for specific skill sets for people that will go to specific places, to specific companies, so they keep the brand Harvard a certain way. You just need to understand what are they expecting and then assess yourself against it and come up with an answer. Am I what we're expecting? This could be a yes,
Yeah.
could be a no. And
And you might also learn through that process that you went through in terms of contacting current students and reaching out to, other people affiliated with those schools, that you don't want to be a part of that program either. Like whether it's just the culture that you kind of see at that school, maybe you don't fit in. Like
exactly,
that it works that way as well. So, but I really like this idea of how you reached out to students. You know me, I've always advocated this, not only to learn about the school, but also to kind of see how you fit in, how you kind of stack up. Do you feel comfortable? Is it a culture you want to be a part of? So I think that's very, very important part of this whole process. Okay. So we've kind of talked about your fifth success factor indirectly, coherence. We mentioned the coherent narrative of your story, of all the roles leading to you applying for an MBA for this private equity role, right? In infrastructure that you've mentioned. So I don't think we really need, is there anything else you want to cover? Well, actually, yeah, let's talk about interviews, because we haven't talked about interviews yet. How did you prepare for these? What was your experience like? I can't wait to hear about this.
okay, when I got the news that I was moving to the interview stage for both schools, I was very excited. So, but I was okay. This is only half of a job done. And again, I did my homework, went on to find statistics about the success rate of interviews. For one school, it was higher than for the other one. But again, I was like, okay, so I have roughly two chances out of three to get in. So how do I make sure I don't fall in the third bottom? And the thing is, yeah, well, I think there is one question everybody knows that comes up to an interview is present yourself, introduce yourself, etc. So these are the
Like,
first,
tell your story, you
yeah,
mean? Tell your story, right?
yeah, yeah. So
Or what
like
do you
the
mean?
first question would be like, okay, who are you? Tell your story, introduce yourself, whatever. And this is your first impression, and you have 2 to 3 minutes to make a good impression of it. So I worked on this particular question. I was like, okay, even mesmerized it. I was like, okay, when I come, I say, I'm Jean-Hugues, I come from Cote d'Ivoire and France. I've been there, I did that, blah, 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 blah. Bang. Okay, this is the first good impression. I even timed myself. I was like, okay, I get that in 3 minutes. It can be 5 or 6 minutes because it is too long. 3 minutes is okay. And from that point on, I need to shift the interview from being an actual interview to becoming conversation. Because if it's an interview, I'm not sure of the odds. But if it's a conversation, I'm pretty sure I'll get in. And that's the same strategy I have when it comes to job application and to job interview. I need to shift what we're doing here from being an interview, so being basically a Q&A. So he asks a question, I give an answer, and then he ticks a box to becoming a conversation. Because in conversation, you can go deeper actually. And so I knew well, again, I did a little research on the internet, also used AI. So ChatGPT said, okay, can you give me a list of 10, 20 questions that can come up to an interview? I think there are dozens of resources out there on the web that you can find for interview questions to prepare for MBA interviews. Now, and I tried to, yeah, to prepare an answer for each of his questions, but not a complete answer this time, like the introduction. Was more, okay, a couple of bullet points. I'll say, okay, if you ask me why this particular program, I have two, three bullet points that I should develop an answer around. Because again, if it's a conversation, I mean, it must sound natural. It
Yeah.
cannot be scripted,
Yeah.
the conversation. And that's how I worked around it basically. So I had my bullet points here. So I had my notebook right next to me, and two of it. So for Insead, I had one video interview and another interview in person. Two of them went pretty well actually. The in-person interview was very, very casual conversation. So he asked me about my aspirations, what I was expecting from the program, why Insead, what am I doing at work, what other projects I like, etc., etc. And then he asked me a particular question about, okay, I understand you want to get Insead because you want to go to private equity, that's cool, but what makes you think that you'll actually be able to achieve that?
Yeah. Great question. Great
Yeah,
question.
yeah, it was great and straight. I was okay. I told him, well, thing is, I've been working with these private equity development finance guys for the past 6 to 7 years. I've been able to supply them with strategies, advice, work on transactions, raise money from them, etc. So I understand the language, I understand the market. And the thing is, I have the connections in the market because I've been able to develop a solid network of contacts. So I think that becoming an investor, I'll be able to source deals to be able to, yeah, to invest at the right price or yeah, at the right price tag or right interest margin, etc. And also at the same time make sure that those projects, because of its infrastructure, will be both beneficial from a financial standpoint but also an economic standpoint, so that it can actually impact the lives of people. And I can do that because I've been an investment banker, so I know the transaction. I've been in financial advisory, so I know all the feasibility studies. And I've been in government, so I know what government are expecting. And you cannot find a lot of PE guys that have been in government and know what the government wants. And usually it's totally different from what an investor wants. So I think I'm the guy that can reconcile all the stakeholders around the project, and told me, you know what, this is convincing. So if you can convince me, I think you can convince other people. So I tell you, I'm not supposed to tell you that, but you know what? I recommend you for this school. Well, okay, so I was like, okay, this is the first week. And then yeah, my second interview, this one was very, very tough actually. She had very, very straight questions, and she didn't give me a minute to brief actually. She was asking me this, asking me that. Why do you think this is true? Are you sure about your answer? But I was like, oh wow. It was
Wow.
like,
But her questions were all related to your career journey and what you
yeah,
want
to
to
my
do
career
after,
journey
or?
and to why I want to get into Insead. So the coherence of my career journey, basically, and also of my post MBA aspirations. And she was questioning every single thing and getting into the smallest details of every question. At some point, I was like, maybe she knows me from somewhere. She has a problem with me because I don't understand why all these questions. But after that, we took a good 30 minutes to have a casual discussion. And she was like, oh, basically, I did what I was supposed to do. Now I want to give you advice for what when you get in Seattle. So when she told me
Wow.
that, I was like, okay, so that
Wow.
means I'm getting in.
Wow.
And yes, and you're very,
The
very,
INSEAD admissions people probably don't want to hear that, but that's hilarious. That's great. Yeah. I mean, she put you through the tough part, right? And then you got through it.
Exactly. So yes, these were two very different interviews, but I think these were very human interviews, I would say. So they were trying to get to know who I am as a person, of course, as a professional, as a future student, etc. But who am I as a person? And if the MBA was actually fitting into what I was expecting, and if the MBA could get me where I wanted. And I think when that's, from my perspective, that's how it should be actually. So yeah, inside interviews is only with alumni, so you have no interview via outcome, etc. And yeah, so this way, and with for LBS, the interview was with a program manager, and again worked on my introduction. And after that, she asked me a very very complicated question. She was okay. Can you give me an example of one person you look up to, like you admire? This could be someone in finance, politics, whoever you like, history. But and I was not at all prepared for this question. I was like, my dad, maybe? I didn't know. I was like, okay. So I gave her I got my ideas together. I gave her an answer, a structured answer about, the first president of my country, and now his how his vision and strategic leadership has drove Cote d'Ivoire from being a former French colony to be actually one of the strongest economy in Africa, while we're quite a little small country actually. And I think the 10 past years, we have been the fastest growing economy in the world. So obviously he's not there anymore. It's more his successors, but because he laid down the foundation for this, it allowed it to happen. And then I tied it back to me in infrastructure project finance. And infrastructure is about laying down the foundations so that the economy can grow. And yeah, I think she liked my answer. So, and then after that, she said, "Oh, you're from Cote d'Ivoire. I know a student from Cote d'Ivoire that came a couple of years ago because you don't have many people from Cote d'Ivoire going to LBS." And I gave her the name. I said, "Oh, it's this guy." She said, "Yes. How do you know?" I said, "Because I contacted all the Ivorians that went to this MBA program." And she was like, "Wow, okay, so you really want to get in?" I said, "Yes, I do my homework." And then we had a casual conversation from there, and I got to do. So I think, yeah, again, it's about doing your homework. You have an interview, you prepare for
That was
it,
the focus. Yeah.
and yeah, and most essentially, again, you turn it from an interview to a conversation. Because it's the only way when you finish, you know if it's a yes or a no. Because you know when you have a bad conversation with someone. But a good interview, you don't know.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's such a good tip. So, okay, two follow-ups on that. So, you got your what you call the introduction down pat, right? Like, so the introduction is essentially you're answering three questions, right? Like, what are you doing? What's your career goal and why this MBA program, right? Is that pretty much the
Exactly, yeah,
introduction?
just laying down the context. I've been doing this is my career goal, that's why I'm applying, that's it.
Yeah, the context. Yeah. And you didn't feel like you didn't, in that introduction, you didn't have some, huge emotional story or anything. It's just super direct.
No, super direct, just me. Very like basically this is information she could get from my resume or essays. It's just that okay, if you ask who am I, I'm supposed to be able to give you a coherent answer about which mirrors what I've said in the essays. If I can't, this means there's a discrepancy here. So just reminding her who am I and why I'm here today. That's it.
That's right. I like that. Yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah, lay the context down. And then when you talk about moving it from an interview to a conversation, how frequently did your interviewers bring up like your other interests outside of your professional work, or did they not even do that?
Oh,
Like writing?
they did actually. I think the three of them did. After asking me about my career, etc. So I think after all the hardest questions, we come like, okay, what do you do besides that? I think I know that I mentioned that I have a father, so they asked me, okay, for how long? How does that fit into your career, etc., etc. So yeah, I think what I mean by turning an interview to a conversation is basically, for instance, if you ask me, what do you like particularly in your job? I'll give you an answer, what I like in infrastructure, project finance, etc. And then I ask you back, and you, what do you like about your job? And then he has to answer. He can't say, no, I'm here for an interview. He will answer. And from that point on, now we can discuss.
And then so when you turn the question back on them, would they like talk for a while or just a quick answer and they get to their next question?
Oh, it depends. Sometimes they talk for a while. Sometimes they give me just a quick answer. But the thing is, because again, I do my homework, so I know who I'm speaking with. I know the sector. I know what are the trends in their sector. So I ask follow-up questions. So if you just tell me, okay, I like in my work being an IT guy, blah blah blah. I say, okay, but you know this happened a couple of times ago in your sector, blah blah. What's your take on it? And then from that one, I force a conversation. And I believe is even for them, from an assessment point of view, they have a better chance of assessing me as a person by conversing with me than just by asking me questions.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you can learn a lot about someone by the quality of their questions. So I agree on that. I think where I might push back a little bit is if like you're not answering anything and then you're throwing the question right back. So they're like, okay, like tell me about when you worked with a teammate who was just being really difficult. And then you say a story in 30 seconds. They're like, what about you? Tell me about a time. There's a balance. There's obviously a balance, right? Is what I'm trying to get at. Like, so I don't want people to take your comment out of context. I
Of
think
course,
that it's an interview. They're interviewing you to get into the school. So obviously you're probably going to be talking a little bit more than them and revealing more about yourself than them. But I do agree that, yeah, asking them questions about their experience and what they're doing is a great way to show yourself as a potential classmate, because that's what they're thinking about, right? When you're talking to alumni, it's like, would I want to be in a class with this person? Would I have wanted, to have Cherif as a classmate? I think that's at least when I do those types of interviews, that's how I think about them. So, yeah,
no, you're definitely right on that. Maybe to add a little bit, yeah, definitely. The thing is, I'm being interviewed though. I will be doing most of the talking. That's obvious. The way I see it is like, even when you ask questions, you must demonstrate knowledge. So if, I don't know, one of my interviewers was a senior executive at one of the biggest telco in Europe, in the world, actually. You can come to the interview not knowing anything about telco. Of course, you are the one being interviewed. But again, I think this is one opportunity to speak with a senior executive for one of the biggest telcos of the world.
yeah,
So you can't waste it. You can't be just like, okay, you ask a question, I'll answer, and then goodbye. No, you must demonstrate that, okay, you know what? What I do is corporate finance. So I know there are transactions, I know there is strategy there in relation to your particular sector. And you, because you're a senior exec there, you should be able to give me, answers, but also demonstrate that you have learned from the MBA and that from your position, you're able to give, advice, insight, etc. But again, when asking my question, it's not like, a 10-second question, say, what do you think about the upcoming trend? No, it's about I've researched, I've seen this is the trend, I've seen this is the way it's going. What are you doing about it? For example, me, I'm quite interested, in climate finance, etc. I did quite some work in climate finance, and I know this is a problem for telcos. So I was like, okay, what is the green strategy? Because I can see it. And then he went on explaining me, and then so I followed up on my opinion and say, okay, but from my perspective, the best way to achieve that is to this and that. And by this way, you already demonstrated that, okay, if this guy becomes an alumni of our school, when we'll put him in a room full of execs, he'll get the numbers and business cards of everyone because he would have
yeah,
done his homework knowing who will be in the attendance and you'll be able to have interesting conversations with him. So it's not about being fake and asking fake questions
that's
just to
right.
sound
That's right.
smart. It's about really owning the topic and taking and yeah, enjoying the opportunity of speaking with a senior exec. And I think this is important actually.
I love that. That's awesome. I think we could end it there. I mean, I think that's a great place to end our conversation. I mean, is there anything else you want to impart? You've listened to many of these episodes. Is there any last thing you want to say to our listeners?
Just yeah, I just maybe just one thing. Yeah, just believe in yourself. But again, self-awareness is key. I think out of everything, self-awareness is key. You need to know where you stand and be realistic about where you can go. And small steps are okay. What I mean by small steps, let's say, you know what, you went to an unknown college in the US. Then you apply to a regional level university. Then you get a master's degree from a nationwide university, and then you get to Harvard. And it's okay. But trying to make a step from an unknown college to Harvard, you won't make it. You can be as fantastic as you won't make it. So it's about knowing where you stand and do your best to go up to the next level without losing the focus on what your objective is. And this is maybe the advice I can give based on my experience, which is not the best in the world, but it's my experience.
Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome conversation. I just want to thank you, Cherif, for sharing your journey and just being so open about it. I think this is going to be a great episode that will last a lot. It will be evergreen for a long time. I hope listeners take away kind of your mindset, how you approached this whole thing. And there's so many gold nuggets in this one. So thank you again. And let's stay in touch. And then maybe we can do a recap after you go through the Insead program.
Okay, we'd love to do that. Thanks again, Darren, for this opportunity. And thanks for answering my first email about the profile review. You can't know how valuable this was. And all the best in what you're doing. And again, the big thank you, because you are one of the reasons actually I got into the schools. And I think many unheard applicants can testify of that.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for listening to the Touch MBA podcast. Remember, you can get free school selection help and a profile review at touchmba.com. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter. Just search for Touch MBA.